Have you ever asked yourself or wondered when you're looking at your window screens and they're looking weather worn or they've got that metal tingy look? Have you ever thought, I wonder if I could just paint them rather than replace them? And I get it, replacing the screen and resplining, that would be the best. But I'm going to address that question. Can I paint my window screens? And I'm going to go over the 6 mistakes you don't want to make. Okay, mistake number 1 that you don't want to make. Do not try to paint your window screen while your screen is still on your window. Why? Because you're either going to splatter the paint, drip paint, or you're going to press in too far and you're going to paint your window. That's a mistake. You want to remove your screen from your window first. So when it comes to removing the window screen, I know everybody's window screens are slightly different, and I don't know all the window screens that are out there. I can only show you mine. Alright, so on my screen I have 2 tabs. This is the lower left tab, and that means that spring-loaded ball is going to be right underneath it, so I'm going to need to press up and then over to release the most amount of tension on that, and then I'm going to wedge my flathead screwdriver underneath and then rotate it, and that pops that free. I'm going to insert my putty knife and push it this direction, and then I'm going to lift up on the screen. Then I'll get my screwdriver underneath and try to rotate it, and there it went. Just released. Now my screen is free. Okay, so here's a side note. Once you've taken your screens off your windows, if they're really badly damaged, they have big holes, they have tears, do not bother trying to paint them, or the material is really fragile. Okay, that's going to be a waste of time. Find your screen mesh material and replace it properly. So now that you've taken your screens down and looked them over, if the screen mesh integrity is in good condition and you still want to try painting them, don't make mistake number 3. Don't paint your window screens before cleaning them. Wash them down with soap and water, then rinse them off with fresh water, wipe them down with a rag, and then let them air dry before you paint them. Why? Paint doesn't stick well to a dirty window screen. Next, you want to prep your workstation. I'm going to go over also the paint that I use. And the type of paint brushes that I use, because that's important. Okay, when it comes to my paint brushes, I need good control, and I also need a medium to medium light stiff brush. The bristles also need to be able to penetrate the screen mesh, which this one does. But when I'm spreading the paint, I like my brush not to fan out super wide, because if I'm close to the borders, the hairs will paint the border, and I don't want that. So these brushes are way too flimsy and they don't penetrate the mesh. I also use a small hobby paintbrush, and the purpose on this, again, this is like a medium stiffness, is that I like to paint my borders very close to the border. I have excellent control, and I can do all my corners and borders, and then I'll use the other brush to paint through. Now, one other little hot tip is you want to have like a sewing needle, a toothpick, or even a stick pin handy, just in case any of the screen mesh gets clogged, you can poke through. And also, you want to do this while you're in a cool, shady spot. Okay, so notice I moved to a shady location. My paint's in the shade. I'm going to do my screens in the shade. Don't make mistake number 4. Don't paint in direct sunlight. The reason being, your paint will either thicken or dry too fast. Your screens will absorb the heat and it'll dry too fast. And what will happen is, when you're trying to paint, it'll make the screen clog more easily. So don't paint in the direct sunlight. Find a shady, cool spot to do your work. Mistake number 5. Don't dip your paintbrush deep into your paint. Okay, you just want to get the tips wet. That way there's less chance of clogging the screen when you apply it. You don't want to apply a bunch of paint at once. Think light. Okay, so I'm going to show how I'm going to touch up this corner first with this small paintbrush. This way I have good control in the corners. So let me go to work on this section. You'll kind of see what I do. Now, if you do make a little tiny mistake, you've got your soapy wet rag. Bang. That's why I keep the soap rag around. Okay, so I'm going to go over a tip, and that is, when you're pretty much finished painting your screen, you're going to want to look at it at different angles, because the light reflection is going to reveal, like I can tell right now, this little area here can be touched up. Another tip is, put a black background, I just have a t-shirt here, and put it up against the t-shirt so you can get a good look at it. So I'm going to do some touch-up work. I'm going to use my little brush where I have much better control. Okay, so I'm just about finished here with this last screen. And let me just get this last little bit of paint on, because then there's 2 other things you want to do before you think you're finished. So the first thing you want to do, again, I like to use my black t-shirt, put my screen down, look at it from a couple different angles, see if I missed anything, both sides. And I'll show you some close-ups of the difference of before and afters, what I've done. And then we'll talk about the 6th thing, which is the 6th mistake you don't want to make. All right, so what is mistake number 6 that you don't want to make? You just finished painting your window screens, both sides. You put a black background down and you've done different angles to see, do you need to do any touch-up work? Let's say you did. Now you're finished painting. Great. You're looking at your window screens and you're thinking, wow, these really look rejuvenated. I can't wait to put them back up on my windows. No, don't do that just yet. Why? because paint is wet and sticky. And so whatever's flying around in the air, dust, debris, dirt, pollen, lint, whatever, is going to stick to your freshly painted window screen. So don't do that yet. What's the solution? Take your freshly painted window screens and place them in the house, a room, a garage, somewhere where there's very little air disturbance, and let them fully dry. I would suggest 24 hours. I personally, these screens have been sitting for 2 days and they're totally dry, nothing on my hands. In fact, they feel like they're new screens. But now, because they are fully dry, now I'm going to go hang them back up on my window. Okay, so I've got the pin on top and the pin on the bottom where the tab is. So I'm going to insert the screen in the frame. I'm going to push up to lock in the top pin. To push up against this pin, and that'll help click it into place. And then for the bottom pin by the tab, as I was showing with my screwdriver, there, that one's in. So now we'll go to the second one. So the right side's in, now the second side, again, I'll push up and then insert my screwdriver where that pin is, press up, locks in place. So now my screens are reinstalled and they look fantastic. But you might be wondering, how long do they last? And honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I've done them both ways as far as replacing the mesh or painting them. What I can say is, if I get 1 to 2 years of an extension of life out of the old screen, it probably isn't worth the time and effort. If I get 3 years or more, I'd say thumbs up, that is worth it. And I will definitely say to rescreen with brand new mesh is faster and easier to do than painting. Just saying.